You said something on ESPN recently, and I agree with you, but I want you to kind of explain it. You said Shedeur Sanders is the most powerful black man in America since Barack Obama. Explain that.
I meant it too, Steve. Stack, I meant that with every bone in my body, because what I started to realize is that when he went, not the second game that he was announced to start, it was the game before that.
The Raider game?
The Raider game.
The Raider game?
And so what I realized was when Shedeur Sanders, this is the first thing, when Shedeur Sanders is playing, all beef stops at that moment, right? It's the first time that you actually could go on social media, X, Instagram, TikTok.
Threads.
What up, Threads, right? Yeah, absolutely, Threads. I was gonna say it, he beat me to it, you know what I mean? So you go on there, right, and it's nothing but positive vibes.
Take a moment to absorb this, because when Kendrick Perkins made that comment on ESPN, it wasn't just another hot take. It struck a raw nerve. In a sport driven by power dynamics, branding, money, and perception, Perkins wasn't discussing numbers on a stat sheet or wins and losses. He was talking about presence, influence, and the strange calm that follows when Shedeur Sanders steps onto a football field. Suddenly, the noise fades, the arguments disappear, and for once people are simply watching and supporting instead of fighting online. That idea gained even more weight when Perkins repeated it on All The Smoke Unplugged with Matt Barnes and Steven Jackson, refusing to soften his stance or apologize, making it clear he meant every word. When you connect his comments to what's happening around the Cleveland Browns, to Shedeur's growing role, the criticism, the backing, and even the narrow 23-20 defeat to Buffalo, it becomes obvious this goes beyond the game itself. Every time Shedeur Sanders plays, the NFL environment visibly shifts, viewership rises, merchandise sales increase, stadiums feel more alive, and social media, for once, moves in one direction instead of tearing itself apart. That kind of impact doesn't happen by chance, and it certainly isn't supposed to come from a fifth-round pick who's expected to stay quiet and blend into the background. The real question is why Shedeur Sanders makes so many people uneasy simply by being there. Perkins explains it plainly, pointing back to that Raiders game before all the headlines, where the moment Shedeur took the field, attention locked in. Across platforms like X, Instagram, TikTok, and beyond, the reaction wasn't anger or division. It was positivity, fans of every age and background tuning in, even stories of elderly relatives suddenly watching football because of him. And it's fair to ask who else in the league is creating that kind of unifying pull right now.
It's the first time that I've seen, where it's like, man, everybody in the black community is rooting for this guy. And when I said it, I looked at the comments and it was like, I don't never go in the comments, because you go in the comments, you might catch yourself arguing all day with certain people, right?
I got time. I don't mind that sometimes.
And so it's like, you see people that's like all races, and they're saying, I just bought my 73-year-old grandmother watched Shedeur. And it's like, name me a person that didn't have that type of effect on anybody. And so people don't understand. It's like people are rooting for a guy that was a fifth-round pick. It's only one guy that has, on that team that's top 50 in jersey sales, that's Shedeur, right? And he kills you in his interviews because he has that balance of being arrogant, flashy, which I'm cool with because he put the work in. You know what I mean? If you shine, put it in their face. But then he also killed them with I want to give all praise to God.
Yeah.
And it hurt their soul. Because they want him to take the bait. They throw the rod out there, he never do. He never throw his coach under the bus. So when I think about
I think that coach needs to be thrown off the bus, but go ahead.
I think
under the bus.
His ass should have been fired.
This is where Kendrick Perkins' comment truly connects. Because when he said Shedeur Sanders is the most powerful black figure since Barack Obama, he wasn't talking about titles or positions. He was talking about impact, visibility, and presence, about how a young quarterback can step into a losing Brown season, take a narrow 23-20 defeat to Buffalo, and still dominate the conversation the next morning. The support around Shedeur isn't driven by highlights alone. It comes from a shared belief that he hasn't been given a fair platform, a fifth-round pick ranking among the top jersey sellers on his own team, which directly challenges the league's promise that performance automatically earns opportunity. Cleveland lost that game, yet the stadium was full, the attention was national, and the interest was undeniable. Because without Shedeur under center, that matchup doesn't carry the same weight. And that's simply reality. What unsettles critics even more is how he handles the moment. Calm in interviews, confident without arrogance, expressive but disciplined, shining on the field and immediately giving credit to faith and teammates, never biting when controversy invites him to react. That restraint frustrates people who want a headline, a meltdown, or a villain, because he refuses to play that role. Shedeur represents more than numbers. He represents connection at a time when sport rarely unites anyone. And that's why comments comparing his influence to leadership figures resonated rather than faded. Even in defeat, the conversation shifts away from questioning his ability and towards coaching, support, and structure, which tells you fans see what's happening even when organizations hesitate. He never publicly blames anyone, even when pressure mounts. And that composure builds trust far beyond Cleveland. The question that lingers is whether this reaction would exist without his surname, or whether we're witnessing a cultural moment unfolding alongside the football itself, because his presence keeps cameras on a team that would normally fade into irrelevance during a losing season. Losing teams usually disappear from the spotlight, yet with Shedeur the focus intensifies, and that's the point Perkins was making: influence that doesn't demand attention but commands it. The fifth-round label keeps being used to minimize him, but fans see packed stadiums, rising viewership, and engagement that tells a different story, raising the uncomfortable issue of control. Because when someone young, visible, and confident refuses to fit neatly into expectations, systems get uneasy. As the season continues, there will be more pressure, more tight losses, and more scrutiny. But each game adds to the evidence that his impact extends beyond wins and losses, creating unity, curiosity, and sustained attention. So the real question isn't just whether Shedeur Sanders is the future at quarterback. It's whether the league is prepared for the kind of influence it's already exercising. Because history rarely announces itself loudly. It often appears in moments like this, when a player loses the game but somehow makes the story bigger rather than smaller.